Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated to a medieval Pokémon world. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. The series What If Fusion deck user in a different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX will be going on hold soon, since we're nearly at the end of the story. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if Reincarnated in Bleach as Toshiro Hitsugaya? What if Reincarnated in Marvel as a gamer? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 151. Minccino. The Minccino's eyes widened. They jumped off Dragonite and nimbly climbed the fruit trees, expertly picking berries with their tiny paws. So, do you want to stay here, or continue living with us? Lucian asked with a gentle smile. The Minccino didn't even hesitate. They chose the latter immediately. Minxai. Even if Lucian sometimes made the house messy, they still liked him and wanted to live with him. Lucian wasn't surprised. He simply smiled, reached out, and gently rubbed their soft heads. Then please take care of us from now on, Minccino. Minxai. Beside them, Superior let out a quiet, amused hiss. It knew from the beginning that it had not chosen the wrong human. At that moment, the group of Shuckle noticed Lucian. Ho-hoo! This was the human who had invited them to live here. The Shuckle hurried over, crowding around him in excitement and expressing their gratitude in their wobbling way. If Lucian had not taken them away that day, they would still be hiding under a giant rock, afraid to come out except at night to search for berries. Now they could eat sweet berries every day, live safely, bask in the sun and enjoy peace. It was the best life they had ever had. Almost instantly, Lucian received a wave of satisfaction notifications. It was not a huge amount, but several hundred in total. More than enough to show how happy they were. Lucian smiled warmly. Then stay here and live well. Ho-hoo! The Shuckle wiggled happily. Footsteps sounded behind him. Your Highness Lucian? Lucian turned to see a green-haired girl around 20 years old standing nearby, holding a metal pail and staring at him in surprise. And you are? Realizing she had not introduced herself, the girl quickly bowed. My name is Lillian. Lord Elif assigned me to look after the orchard here and to take care of the Shuckle and the other Pokémon. I see, Lucian said. Your Highness, what brings you here today? Lillian asked. I came to check on the magical beasts that were rescued from the royal city. Are they doing well? Lillian's expression brightened. She hurriedly set down her pail and gestured for him to follow. Please, this way, Your Highness. Walking ahead, she explained. At first, the magical beasts were frightened. Later, Lord Elif sent me here to care for them, and gradually they adapted. They seem to understand that we will not harm them. Now they are not afraid of humans at all. Lucian nodded, relieved. They walked through the orchard until a 2-story wooden house appeared in the woods, surrounded by a fence. Many Pokémon could be seen moving inside. We are here. This is where I live with them, Lillian said. Through the back door of the cabin, Lucian entered a peaceful garden filled with Pokémon. Tepig, Sandret, Electabuzz, Excadrill, Flareon, Sandshrew, Lickitung, Psyduck, Azurill, Sylveon, Magnemite, Whimsicott, Skitty and even a rare Clefairy. These were the Pokémon that had once been enslaved in Eindhoek. Lucian still remembered their fear and trembling when they first arrived. But now their nervousness had melted away. What remained were bright eyes, soft smiles, and genuine happiness. Calling this place a nature reserve felt incorrect. It was more like a Pokémon sanctuary, Lucien thought, a place where rescued Pokémon could truly heal. Not far ahead, a Psyduck had found a berry, placed it on the grass and stared at it with deep confusion. The sight soon attracted other Pokémon. A Tepig trotted over, listened to Psyduck's explanation and cheerfully roasted the berry with a small ember. Psyduck took a bite and immediately hopped around in pain, fanning its beak with its hands. Lillian giggled softly. "These magical beasts are actually really adorable," she murmured. Lucien agreed wholeheartedly. "Yeah." At that moment, the group of Pokémon finally noticed the two figures standing nearby. Some rushed over excitedly, while others peeked from behind the trees, a little nervous but curious. Lillian crouched down and gently patted the head of a timid Patrat before introducing Lucien to them. "This is Prince Lucien. He built this place so all of you could live safely and comfortably." Hearing that, the Pokémon all turned to look at Lucien with wide, curious eyes. Lucien smiled warmly at them. A few Pokémon suddenly remembered that they had seen this human before when they were first brought here. The humans had said he was the king's son. "Hello. Are you getting used to life here?" Lucien asked kindly. Tepig immediately snorted with excitement. "Pigoo." But Lucien suddenly shifted the topic. "I heard that some of you sneak out of the orchard and into town. Is that true?" The Pokémon instantly froze. Pigoo." Tepig lowered its head nervously. "Were they in trouble?" "They only went because this place was wonderful and safe, and they were curious about how the Pokémon and humans in town lived together. The humans there were gentle, patient, and treated Pokémon with real kindness. It was completely different from the horrible treatment they had suffered when they were slaves in Eindhoek. Deep down, many of them had started wishing for something they never dared to dream of. To meet a human who liked them. To live together happily, just like the other Pokémon in town. But now it seemed they had misunderstood. Maybe Lucien was angry. "No. You misunderstood something." Seeing their panic, Lucien quickly reassured them. "Pigo?" Tepig lifted its head slightly, unsure. "You went because you were curious about the Pokémon in town and the way they live with humans, right?" Lucien asked. Tepig nodded hard. "Pigoo. I see." Lucien thought for a moment, then smiled and asked gently. "Tepig, would you like to meet a human who likes you and live with them, just like the Pokémon in town?" Pigoo? Tepig's eyes doubled in size. Was that really possible? The little fire-type's eyes sparkled with hope. Chapter 152, People of the Right Age. Lucien City's central square was crowded with people. The citizens pressed together in front of the steps where Elif stood. "I wonder why Lord Elif suddenly gathered us here. Is the war about to start?" "No, that cannot be." Before the speculation grew louder, Elif surveyed the crowd. He cleared his throat, and the noisy civilians instantly fell silent. "Everyone, I gathered you here today under His Highness Lucien's command. A new organization will be established, the Trainer Association. A trainer is someone who raises and works with magical beasts, what we commonly call beast tamers. Lucien City urgently needs people who can help guide magical beasts and maintain stability. His Highness Lucien intends to cultivate trainers who can protect the territory and help newly arrived magical beasts adapt to life here." His announcement sparked excitement. A beast tamer? People like that have such high status. Can I become one? That sounds incredible. If I become a trainer, I could ride a flying beast through the sky. After living alongside Pokémon for a year, most civilians had shed their fear. Curiosity had taken its place. Once the excitement subsided, a man in front raised his hand. "Lord Elif, how do we join the Trainer Association?" Elif smiled. His Highness said that becoming a trainer is not determined by class or birth. Anyone who likes magical beasts, who can accept and care for them sincerely, may become a trainer. This will be a royal organization directly under His Highness Lucien. He will personally teach you how to train magical beasts and will provide each of you with a partner Pokémon to choose from. You will help resolve incidents involving magical beasts. As compensation, the association will grant you a monthly allowance on the 15th. The crowd brightened again. This opportunity seemed almost unreal. But Elif continued. However, if anyone is discovered harming magical beast or acting dishonestly, the association will punish them severely. Starting today, only children between the ages of 10 and 15 may register at the city hall. Only children? Why cannot adults become trainers? We love magical beasts too. Adults will have a chance later, Elif explained. His Highness has his reasons. This is only a trial phase. Once the association matures, the method of becoming a trainer will be shared with everyone. The civilians relaxed, and many hurried home to bring their children to register. The next morning, inside the city hall, Lucien stood before a group of children. Their faces showed excitement mixed with nervousness. There were about 40 of them, boys and girls alike. The moment they saw him, several froze. They had never been so close to royalty. A few braver ones stepped forward and bowed. Your Highness. The rest followed quickly. Lucien nodded. Do not be nervous. Welcome to the world of magical beasts. He reached into his pocket and took out a berry-crafted pokeball. A flash of white light burst out as Dragonite appeared. Its round body, soft belly, gentle eyes, and the powerful dragon aura it carried immediately captured every child's attention. Wow! Lucien smiled. This is a magical beast. They live in this world just like humans do. You can find them in the sea, in the sky, in forests, and on plains. Once, humans and magical beasts were enemies. But now, we work together, help one another, and grow side by side. In everyday life, we cooperate with magical beasts. Sometimes, we fight alongside them. So cool! Most of the children had already seen how people in the territory relied on Pokémon for work and defense. Hearing Lucien's words, their eyes sparkled with excitement. Everyone, Lucien called out, do you want to become trainers, to live and fight beside magical beasts, and become the strongest partners? Yes, the children shouted together. Good. Then come find me at the breeding center outside the territory. Lucien stepped outside, climbed onto Dragonite's back, and soared into the sky. The children stared upward in a daze until Elif chuckled and reminded them, His Highness has already prepared your first magical beast partners. Use your own strength to find His Highness at the breeding center. This is your first test. A test. The moment the word reached their ears, the children's eyes blazed with determination. They had to pass it. They had to live up to His Highness Lucien's expectations. With that thought burning in their hearts, the group of children rushed out of the city hall. They had lived within the city their whole lives, and the newly built breeding center was unfamiliar to them. But that was fine. The clever ones quickly realized they could ask adults for directions. The road between Lucien City and the breeding center was not long. Along the way lived gentle Pokémon such as Budew, Petilil, and Pidove. None of them were aggressive, so the children would be safe. Even if an accident occurred, they would still be protected. Lucien had already ordered Dragonite and Superior to secretly patrol the country road to ensure the children's safety. Lucien himself went on ahead to the breeding center. Inside, a number of Pokémon, Tepig, Clefairy, Psyduck, Buniri, and Patrat, were gathered, watching him with anticipation. Lucien smiled at them. Don't worry. The children will be here soon. Chapter 153, Choosing Starter Pokémon. Lucien was enjoying the experience of acting like a Pokémon professor, and he had to admit that guiding these children to become trainers was genuinely exciting. Lillian, who oversaw the orchard and took care of the Pokémon, was truly happy for them. Lucien then turned his gaze toward a pile of simple Pokeballs made from berries. These were the results of Morik's recent research. Once the Royal Workshop was established, Lucien personally joined and began directing its development. Pokeballs were easy to carry and were capable of housing Pokémon of any size, making them strategically invaluable. Such technology absolutely needed to remain in their control. Unfortunately, Pokeballs of this era did not possess the capture function familiar from modern times. As in the early stories, this primitive Pokeball worked only when a Pokémon willingly entered it, and it could leave at any time. In many ways, this design was more considerate of a Pokémon's feelings than modern versions. Lucien recalled that modern Pokeballs had a locking mechanism that prevented escape once activated. In the movie Pokémon, Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution, Professor Orin even blocked the Pokeball IDs of the main characters, preventing them from sending out their Pokémon. He wondered if some details could be modified to prevent such restrictions under his rule. Lucien set the idea aside and turned his attention back to the group of Pokémon around him. The old king had sent him roughly 1,000 citizens and about 150 Pokémons. After excluding Pokémon such as Machoke, Machamp, Timburr, and Girder who were already working in construction, as well as those that had integrated into town life, there were around 80 Pokémon remaining in the nursery. The children numbered 42, so there were more than enough Pokémon for each child to have a partner. More importantly, not every Pokémon wanted to live with humans. Lucien would not force any of them. He believed that fate would guide each Pokémon to the human destined for them. He sat in the nursery for a while, and soon the first group of children arrived. They knocked politely, and Lillian hurried to open the door. It was a group of 3 boys and 2 girls, led by a tall, muscular boy. When they saw Lucien, their eyes sparkled and they exclaimed, "Your Highness Lucien! We made it here without any trouble." Before they finished speaking, their attention was already drifting toward the Wooloo and the other Pokémon waiting inside. The children's eyes met the Wooloo's, and at that moment, both sides lit up. Lucien smiled and said, "Very good. As a reward, you may be the first to choose your partners from among these magical beasts." He continued, "But remember, choosing a partner is mutual. You choose them, and they must also choose you. Introduce yourselves, show your personalities, and try to earn their approval." "Introduce ourselves," the burly boy said. "I'll go first." He had short, fiery red hair and an energetic attitude that matched it. He stepped confidently toward the group of Pokémon, going straight to the Tepigs. "Hello. My name is Alex. I'm 15 years old, and I love to fight. If you choose me as your partner, I'll train you hard. I'll take you around to battle, help you get stronger, and we'll become the strongest together." Lucien paused for a moment. This kid really was as intense as his report had suggested. Lucien glanced at Alex's file and saw that he fought nearly every day and was the undefeated champion among the neighborhood kids. Recently, he had stopped fighting to avoid worrying his mother and instead helped at her tailor shop. Hearing Alex's introduction, the Tepig's eyes lit up with determination. Tay. Tepig wanted to become a powerful Pokémon. Their eyes locked in an instant. "It seems you've already made your decisions," Lucien said with a smile. "Hey, little guy, want to come with me?" Alex grinned as he asked Tepig. "Tepig." The equally fiery Tepig answered without hesitation. "Tepig is a fire-type magical beast, skilled in fire-based attacks." "The two of you seem like a perfect match," Lucien laughed. He intentionally didn't explain Tepig's quirks. Those were things the new partners should discover together. That was the real experience of becoming a trainer. "Yes." Alex lifted Tepig over his head triumphantly. He finally had his own magical beast. "Go spend a little time getting to know your new partner. Once everyone has chosen, I have something to explain to all of you," Lucien said. "Got it." Alex stepped aside with Tepig. Next came a quiet girl with long blue hair. She stepped forward, clearly nervous. Facing the group of Pokémon, she didn't know who to choose. After hesitating for a long moment, she turned to Lucien and asked softly, "Your Highness, could you introduce these magical beasts to me?" "Of course," Lucien said, stepping forward. Just then a familiar voice called from outside. "Teacher, I'm here." Lucien turned and saw Anna running in excitedly. Anna? Why are you here? He asked in mild surprise. Hee, how could Zoroark and I miss something this fun? Anna grinned. Lucian sighed inwardly, but he had plans for Anna. He had already taught her everything about Pokémon in training. He intended to have her assist at the Trainer Academy and teach the younger students. Since you're here, stay and watch quietly, Lucian said. Yes. The blue-haired girl turned back to the Pokémon. Lucian began introducing them one by one. This is Psyduck, a water-type magical beast. It can attack with water gun, and it also holds a mysterious psychic power inside its body. It can unleash telekinesis, but using that power often gives it headaches. Drillbur, a ground-type magical beast, is skilled with its sharp claws and is excellent at digging. It can move swiftly underground and strike from below. Patrat, a normal-type magical beast, excels at scouting and keeping watch. It can bite fiercely with its sharp incisors and also has a hypnotic glare that can put opponents to sleep. Chapter 154, Pokémon School. Lucian gave a brief introduction to all the Pokémon gathered before him. In this era, humans knew nothing about the relative strength of different species. They chose their partners based mostly on appearance and personality. Some preferred fluffy, cute Pokémon, while others gravitated toward large or imposing ones. The blue-haired girl in front of him thought for a long time before finally pointing at a small, harmless-looking Buneri. Your Highness, I want to choose this one, she said. Her name was Melanie. Buneri is a wonderful partner. I'm sure the two of you will get along well, Lucian nodded. He directed the latter part of his words toward Buneri. Buneri buzzed happily in response. It clearly liked Melanie too. Melanie stepped aside to wait. Then the next child stepped forward to choose a partner, and then the next. Following the basic procedure of distributing starter Pokémon, Lucian quickly matched suitable partners for the first group of children. Then the second group arrived, then the third. By noon, all 42 children had found a Pokémon partner. They stood in 4 neat rows in the courtyard of the breeding center, all of them looking at Lucian with bright, expectant eyes. Congratulations, Lucian said with a warm smile. You've officially become beginner-level trainers. Do you remember what I said earlier about what a trainer is? A trainer is someone who raises magical beasts, commands them in battle, and spars with them. Alex shouted proudly. Correct, Lucian nodded. But do you know why trainers fight? That question left the children puzzled at first. Then one boy raised his hand. To protect our territory? And to help humans who are harmed by wild monsters, another girl added. Lucian smiled. Exactly. Trainers battle to protect their home, to protect people and magical beasts alike, and to make our land a better place. He looked toward Anna and gave her a small signal. She nodded. Hee, leave this part to me. Anna turned around and carried out a wooden box filled with berry-crafted Pokeballs. The children's eyes widened instantly. This, Lucian said, picking one up, is called a Pokeball. It represents the bond between a trainer and their magical beasts. He pressed the button, and with a soft burst of light, Larvesta appeared beside him. This small sphere can serve as a comfortable home for a magical beast. If they trust you, they will willingly enter the ball. Let me show you. Lucian gently tapped the Pokeball against Larvesta's head. In the next moment, Larvesta transformed into a beam of red light and was drawn inside. Whoa! That's incredible! The children were stunned. Then a girl raised her hand nervously. Your Highness! But the ball is so small, and the magical beasts are so big. Won't they be uncomfortable inside? Good question, Lucian said, pleased. But don't worry. Magical beasts naturally possess the ability to shrink. And the interior of a Pokeball isn't as simple as it looks. It's actually filled with soft, cloud-like cotton. To a magical beasts, it feels like resting on warm, drifting clouds. The cotton used came from Whimsicott's fluff and naturally shed down feathers from Swablu, some of the softest materials in existence. Kiram had also translated Lucian's explanation for the Pokémon and confirmed its accuracy with Dragonite, Superior, and Larvesta. As the first generation of trainers in this territory, each of you will receive 3 Pokeballs. If you meet other magical beasts who wish to join you, you may use these to invite them. If you ever run out, you can buy more at the friendship shop in town. But even without a Pokeball, Lucian added with a smile, your bond with your magical beasts won't change. The children listened carefully. Do you understand? Lucian asked. Understood, they shouted together. Lucian said calmly, very good, that's all for today. Starting tomorrow, you will need to go to the school in the city center to study. There will be teachers and scholars there to teach you literacy and magical beasts knowledge. Subjects such as types, moves, type matchups, evolutions and other basics would all be included. Among the people the old king had sent were many scholars. Although they understood very little about Pokémon, they were highly knowledgeable in other academic fields. As for the Pokémon-related knowledge and teaching materials, Lucian would compile those himself. But that would have to wait until proper modern papermaking was ready, Lucian thought. What? School? The children's eyes widened with shock. Could they really attend school like noble children? Of course, Lucian said with a smile. He understood their disbelief. In my territory, everyone can attend school. The children froze for a moment, then their faces lit up with joy. This was something they had never dared imagine. Everyone, go back and get to know your partners, Lucian said. Yes, Your Highness, the children responded together, excitement bubbling in their voices. With their new Pokémon partners, the children made their way back toward Lucian City. Lucian nodded to Lillian and headed back toward the city hall. He sat behind his desk, deep in thought. Although the territory now had its first trainers, he could not relax. Unlike future generations, these children knew nothing about trainers or Pokémon. There was still a great deal of work ahead of him. The image of Tepig and the other beginner Pokémon crossed his mind. Lucian picked up a pen and began writing down everything he remembered about each species. These notes could serve as temporary teaching materials for the school. A knock suddenly sounded at the door. Right after, Elif's voice called from outside. Your Highness Lucian, the scholars from the capital are waiting outside. Let them in, Lucian said. Yes, Your Highness. The door opened, and Elif entered with around a dozen people dressed in long academic robes. Among them were an elderly gray-bearded man, a bright-eyed middle-aged scholar, and a woman with spectacles. They all looked nervous facing Lucian, then bowed respectfully. Your Highness. Rise, Lucian said. He looked over the gathered scholars. I asked you here because I need your assistance. Please give us your instructions, Your Highness. We will do everything in our power, the elderly scholar replied quickly. You all arrived from the capital nearly 2 months ago, correct? Lucian asked. Exactly 1 month and 18 days, Your Highness, the old man answered. That is quite a long time, Lucian nodded. From today onward, I want all of you to head to the school. I will be sending you a group of students. Your responsibility will be to teach them reading and writing. Chapter 155, I Love You, Mom. The city of Lucian stood peacefully across the plains under the moonlight. Families who had worked all day now sat around their tables. The soft glow of kerosene lamps lit their homes as they enjoyed dinner together. As the territory continued to grow, the food available to ordinary people had become richer and more varied. Most households could now afford soft white bread, warm oatmeal porridge, eggs, fish, lettuce, ham and bottled fruit juice. Their dinners were far more abundant than before. Alex sat with his mother, Martha. Back in the royal capital, she had run a tailor shop, but because of her beauty, she was often harassed by rough men on the streets. Alex had fought those thugs nearly every day just to protect her. Since the day they followed Prince Lucian to this land, those dangers vanished. Alex fought less and less, and instead spent his days helping his mother with her work. 4 months, only the two of them sat at this table. Tonight, however, they had a new family member. Both mother and son stared curiously at the tepig beside them, its small head buried in its plate as it munched on bread. "Is this the magical beast Prince Lucian assigned to you?" Martha asked. "That's right. Its name is Tepig, and it can breathe fire," Alex replied proudly. He had tested Tepig's strength earlier that afternoon. Compared to the girl next door who had partnered with a Buniri, Alex was certain his Tepig was a very strong magical beast. Hearing its trainer speak, Tepig lifted its head and obediently snorted out a burst of flame. The flash of orange light filled the whole room, startling Martha. "Don't worry, Mom. Tepig won't hurt us," Alex quickly reassured her. Martha stared at the little creature, amazed. "Incredible." Tepig grinned at the compliment. Tay. "By the way, Mom, I probably can't help at the shop tomorrow," Alex said excitedly. "Prince Lucian said that tomorrow we're going to school. Real scholars are going to teach us to read and write." "What?" Martha's voice cracked in disbelief. She could hardly believe her ears. "His Highness even said the lessons will be free. Not a single coin." Alex clenched his fist with determination. "Mom, when I become a great trainer, I'll give you a good life. I'll never let anyone bully you again." Hearing this, Martha felt tears welling up. Her heart ached with pride. What shocked her even more was Prince Lucian's decision to teach commoners to read and write. In the royal capital, only nobles and wealthy families received an education. Ordinary people were never given such opportunities. Although Martha was not educated, she understood kindness. Under Lucian's leadership, they were eating well, dressing warmly, and now her son could learn letters like a noble child. She wiped her tears and said gently, "Alex, there may be no one in this world who treats us better than Prince Lucian. When you go to school, you must study hard and repay His Highness for everything he's done." Alex stopped smiling and nodded with deep sincerity. "I will, Mom." The merchants who passed through town often spoke of unrest across the kingdom. War could break out at any moment. Martha clasped her hands quietly and prayed in her heart. If only Prince Lucian could become king. Meanwhile, back at Lucian's mansion. Lucian had ordered several buckets of fresh clay to be delivered. Surrounded by his Pokémon, he began shaping it carefully, following every step recorded in his system. To directly sculpt a Golurk, Lucian would need not only a huge amount of clay but also an enormous amount of ghost-type energy. To conserve resources, he decided to attempt creating a Golett first. He shaped the clay into a humanoid body. With the assistance of his system, the sculpting process was almost effortless. Before long, a lifelike Golett shell sat before him. The next step was the most important one, inscribing the runes. Lucian studied the instructions carefully and was startled to discover that the runes required blood to activate. Blood served as the catalyst that awakened ghost energy and allowed it to fuse with the clay shell. "So Golett can't be mass-produced," Lucian murmured. A king of this era might have ruthlessly used the blood of slaves without hesitation. After all, even in ancient Kalos, AZ built the ultimate weapon to resurrect Floette, consuming countless lives in the process. But Lucian, shaped by modern values, couldn't do anything so cruel. There was one small comfort: once created, Golett and Golurk can lay eggs like any other Pokémon, allowing their species to continue naturally. That was one of the peculiar wonders of the Pokémon world. Man-made Pokémon, like Golett, like Porygon, could still reproduce. Well, since that's how it works, I'll try it myself. Lucian made up his mind. Under the concerned eyes of his Pokémon, he lifted a dagger and lightly cut his fingertip. He dipped his finger into the wound, then began tracing the intricate spiral runes across the Golett's chest. Kyurem watched silently, narrowing its eyes. Victini shrank back nervously. Dragonite and Superior looked worried. Larvesta immediately rushed forward, gently taking Lucian's hand and licking the wound to stop the bleeding. Lucian paused, then smiled at them. "I'm all right." With the rune inscription complete, the next step required a ghost-type Pokémon. He ordered someone to bring John and his newly partnered Shuppet. After Lucian explained what was needed, John eagerly agreed, grateful for Lucien's help the day before. Shuppet floated in front of the gauntlet shell and began channeling ghost-type energy into it. Lucien watched closely. As the energy seeped into the clay, the dim runes slowly began to glow, a soft yellow light rising from the base as if resonating with something deep within. However, the progress was painfully slow. At the current rate, the runes would need at least a full week to fully awaken. Chapter 156, Scholars Questioning and Papermaking. The next day, the Pokémon school officially opened with everyone working together to make it happen. The scholars sent by the Old King served as teachers, responsible for teaching the 42 eligible children how to read and write. Geralt, Ryan, and the knights visited the school during their free hours to teach physical training, discipline, and chivalry. Anna became the trainer instructor, teaching Pokémon types, type matchups, moves, abilities, commands, battles, and evolution. Lucien had stayed up through the night, writing every piece of Pokémon knowledge he could remember onto parchment. At dawn, he handed those makeshift textbooks to Anna for her lessons. Inside the classroom, rows of children sat upright at their desks, listening carefully. Outside the windows, younger children who were not yet 10 peeked in with their Pokémon companions, their eyes wide with envy. "Hikaru, do you think we can study here someday?" a little girl whispered. Before the boy beside her could answer, a cheerful voice sounded behind them. "Of course you can." The two turned around and saw Anna walking toward them. Anna, apprenticed to Lord Lucien and the first official trainer in the entire territory besides him, instantly drew excited shouts from the children. "Anna Nichan!" Anna laughed, patting their fluffy heads. "When you turn 10, you can enroll just like Alex and the others. Lord Lucien wants everyone to learn." "That means everyone can come to school." "Anna Nichan, what does everyone mean?" a little boy asked. "It means rich or poor, noble or former slave, anyone can learn here," Anna said. "That's amazing." Most people in the territory supported the school, but a few considered Lucien's decision outrageous. For example, several scholars from the royal city. In the academy office, a stiff-faced white-bearded old man muttered in displeasure, "His Highness is being reckless." The scholars had assumed Lucien wanted them to teach the children of local nobles. But today, more than half the students were commoners, and many had once been slaves. To a man raised in rigid feudal values, this was unacceptable. Slaves were born inferior, and allowing them into a place of learning was a disgrace. Another scholar, a commoner by birth, frowned. "Howard, you can't speak like that. His Highness must have his reasons." Howard snorted. "Then let His Highness decide." The group eventually went to Lucien. After hearing their concerns, Lucien looked at Howard thoughtfully. "So you believe commoners and former slaves are unqualified to study?" Howard stiffened his neck and answered without hesitation. "Knowledge is sacred. Those low-born creatures only defile this place." Lucien understood immediately. He was not angry. He simply asked, "Do you believe yourself superior to them?" Howard hesitated, but pride pushed him to nod. "Of course." "In what way are you superior?" Lucien asked. Howard opened his mouth, intending to list his advantages. He was born to a baron. He grew up with privileges, attended noble schools, then studied in the royal library. Everything he had came from birthright. But Lucien spoke again, his voice calm. "Set aside your birth. If you were not a baron's son, how would you be any different from them?" Howard froze. "If those same commoners or former slaves had been born into royalty," Lucien continued, "their position would be higher than yours." "Wouldn't it?" Lucien's tone remained gentle, but Howard's back stiffened as if struck. Lucien's words sent the scholars into deep contemplation. Howard's face reddened. After a long moment of silence, he snorted softly and turned his head aside, unable to respond. "You are all humans. In this world, no one is born nobler than another," Lucien said calmly. "Whether commoner or noble, everyone should have the right to receive an education." He looked directly at Howard. "You should understand this, it is only because commoners and former slaves exist that nobles can exist. Without them, What difference would there be between you and those above you? The people can carry a boat, and they can also overturn it. For a country, commoners are its foundation. The room fell silent. The phrase struck every scholar like a hammer, and each of them began to reflect deeply. Just then, Elif came hurrying in, unable to contain his excitement. Your Highness Lucian, we succeeded. The new type of paper you described has been produced. The scholars blinked in confusion. New paper? What sort of paper? Parchment? Before they could question it, Lucian's expression lit up. He immediately rose to his feet. Excellent! Everyone, come take a look. The scholars were baffled, but followed him and Elif to the edge of the city, where the royal workshop stood. Inside the workshop, craftsmen and Pokémon bustled about energetically. When Lucian arrived, they eagerly gathered around. Your Highness, we finished it. The paper looks beautiful. Lucian followed their excited gazes. Spread out on the tables were sheets of pure, snow-white paper. The scholars froze. For a heartbeat, they didn't dare believe their eyes. Paper? Several scholars stepped forward, almost trembling, and touched the surface. Smooth. Sturdy. Clean. Far beyond parchment. This. Your Highness, what is this? One of them asked, barely containing his excitement. Lucian smiled. Exactly what you think it is. Well done, all of you. Elif, prepare rewards for the craftsmen and Pokémon. Yes, Your Highness, Elif replied warmly. The craftsmen cheered. Even the Pokémon, sensing the praise, wagged tails, flapped wings, or bounced happily. The paper-making method Lucian had developed was a blend of ancient human craft and the unique strengths of Pokémon. Water-type Pokémon softened bark and hemp fiber far faster than human soaking ever could. Fire-type Pokémon steamed and broke down the materials in moments. Machoke and Machamp crushed and ground the softened fibers with incredible strength, producing fine pulp in a fraction of the usual time. With Pokémon assisting each step, a process that once took days could now be completed within hours, rivaling modern-era efficiency. After the pulp was layered and pressed, fire types provided gentle, even heat to dry the sheets. Chapter 157, Printing Books, The Beloved King. This is white paper, Lucian told the scholars and craftsmen gathered around him. It's a new paper-making technique I designed, based on the principles of parchment. White paper. A scholar carefully held the sheet, running his fingers across the smooth surface. His mind raced. If books could be made from something like this. Excitement filled his eyes. More importantly, Lucian added with a smile, the materials are inexpensive. All we need is bark and certain plants. What? Several scholars gasped. Your Highness, is that truly possible? Of course, Lucian replied. Every scholar present instantly understood the implications. This paper could be produced cheaply and in mass quantities. Books would no longer be luxury items. Knowledge would no longer belong only to nobles. Even commoners and former slaves would be able to read and write. They remembered Lucian's words about universal education, about opening schools to all children regardless of class. Suddenly, his entire plan became clear. Cheap paper. Books for everyone. Education for all. Their eyes widened. The realization horrified them. Their prince was challenging the foundation of noble privilege. A scholar stammered, Your Highness, isn't this progressing too quickly? Oh? Why do you think so? Lucian asked calmly. The scholar struggled for words. Howard, who had been rigid and resistant since the beginning, finally spoke up. Your Highness, the lords and noble families across the kingdom will see you as their common enemy. You are threatening their interests. Lucian smiled. He turned his wrist slightly. In the next moment, Kurum's towering, icy form materialized behind him. A wave of ancient, overwhelming cold swept through the workshop. The scholars froze where they stood, their legs trembling. Lucian's figure seemed to merge with Kurum's shadow as he leaned casually against the dragon's chest. Then let them try, he said softly. No one could stop him. He had hoped development would progress naturally, but that didn't mean he feared opposition. His refusal to slaughter nobles did not mean he lacked the strength to confront them. If they dared obstruct him, he would not hesitate to visit their keeps with Kurum at his side. I want everyone in this land to have the chance to learn, to understand right and wrong, Lucian said, his voice steady. This is the direction the world must take. It is the only correct path. The scholars stood speechless. Even Kurum nodded faintly, its cold eyes filled with a rare hint of approval. Lucian turned to Howard. If you don't wish to teach, then you can manage the books of the territory. I intend to print them in large quantities, and I will need people to oversee that. Howard lowered his head. For the first time, he understood the scope of what Lucian was trying to achieve. It was not recklessness. It was vision. His own rigid beliefs suddenly felt small and meaningless in comparison. He closed his eyes, took a long breath, and replied, "Yes, Your Highness." Lucian nodded. Printing would come next. He didn't need the system for that. He remembered enough from his own world. Carving individual characters in reverse, arranging them into plates, heating, printing, then disassembling and reusing them. Clay, wood, bronze, porcelain, any of them could be used for movable type. And beyond text, they could carve images of Pokémon as well. Illustrations would help students understand their partners better. This would be the first true textbook in the history of this world. There happened to be a skilled painter living in the territory, Christina, a former court painter who had once helped Lucian study the Pokémon ecology around the region. Lucian instructed Elif to recruit Christina into the royal workshop so she could help illustrate the new books. After settling everything, Lucian left the royal workshop. He recalled Kurum into its Pokeball and, rather than returning to the town hall immediately, walked slowly through the territory to observe its daily life. Children played together in the plaza, running hand in hand with their Pokémon partners. Along the streets, women gathered in small circles chatting and laughing. In the barracks, knights were training intensively alongside their Pokémon. At the hospital, the two nurse Joys, who had once been seen as unlucky, now worked tirelessly to treat injuries. Here, they were no longer feared. People respected them as healers and trusted them deeply. Inside the friendship shop, children picked out Pokeballs and medicine for their Pokémon. The friendship shop, officially named the Human Pokémon Friendship Shop, specialized in selling Pokeballs and Pokémon medicine. Lucian had considered many names when establishing it, but ultimately chose this one, inspired by the concept of bonds between humans and Pokémon. Both the Pokeballs and the medicines symbolized that bond. Outside the friendship shop was the liveliest market in the entire territory. Merchants came and went throughout the day. Aside from Zack's group, many other traveling traders were now attracted to the city. They bought Lucian City's specialties, Mareep wool carpets, sweets, tree sap, and more, and sold them for high prices in distant towns. When Lucian arrived, many of the townsfolk immediately recognized him. Their faces lit up with joy, and they gathered around him. "Your Highness Lucian." "It's His Highness Lucian." "Your Highness, these fruits are from my garden. Please try some." "Your Highness, this is fresh bread. Please have some." "Your Highness, thank you for letting my child attend school. Here are some deerskin boots I made. Please accept them." Lucian raised his hand slightly, smiling. "Everyone, there is no need for that. I only came to see how everyone is doing." His words only made the people talk even more excitedly. "We are doing very well. We have food, warmth, and magical beasts to help us. It's safe to work outside now. And it is all thanks to you, Your Highness." They surrounded him again with small handmade gifts. Lucian hesitated, but in the end he accepted them. They were simple things, but full of sincerity. Looking at the happiness on his people's faces, Lucian felt even more certain that the path he had chosen was the right one. Chapter 158, Kurum the Air Conditioner. Kingdom Year 149, mid-July. Summer heat swept across the land, and the temperature rose higher with each passing day. Inside the mansion, Lucien and his Pokémon huddled comfortably around Kyurem, enjoying the refreshing chill that radiated from the dragon. With Kyurem present, the entire living room felt as cool as if an air conditioner were running. Kyurem was momentarily speechless about Lucien and Dragonite using him as a cooling machine to escape the heat. The massive ice dragon crouched in the middle of the room like a brooding hen, quietly exhaling cold mist through its nostrils. Just then, Lucien arrived carrying a large peeled watermelon. He set down a porcelain plate specially crafted for Kyurem and placed the watermelon on top of it. "Kyurem, you should taste this too. Watermelon is perfect for summer," Lucien said with a smile. Kyurem lowered its head and swallowed the entire melon in one bite. The cool, sweet flavor surprised it. In all its long life, it had never eaten anything quite like this. Still, even if it enjoyed the treat, Kyurem maintained its pride. It would never voluntarily offer food back to Lucien. Lucien didn't notice Kyurem's subtle reaction because a knock sounded at the door. "Come in," Lucien called. Elif entered with his usual respectful posture. "Your Highness Lucien, I have brought the person you asked for." Lucien looked toward the doorway and smiled. "It has been a while, Christina." Christina hurried forward, startled yet honored that Lucien remembered her. She bowed quickly. "Your Highness, may I ask why you summoned me?" Lucien nodded lightly. "I would like to appoint you as the editor-in-chief of the Royal Gazette." "Royal Gazette? Editor-in-chief?" Christina blinked, not quite understanding. Lucien continued. With the successful creation of white paper, many new plans could finally begin. Under Lucien's guidance and with the craftsman's skills, movable type printing had advanced rapidly. Small-scale book printing was already underway. The Academy scholars now divided their time between teaching the students and rewriting fragile old texts at the Royal Workshop, reproducing them with movable type. But that was only part of Lucien's intention. His real goal was to publish newspapers. In an age without phones or the internet, information spread slowly, and common people had little access to news from distant towns. Schools and newspapers together would change that. His people would no longer be ignorant of the world around them. Newspapers could also teach Pokémon knowledge, ecology, behavior, safety guidelines. And perhaps most importantly, newspapers could shape public opinion. War was unavoidable. As the old king said, it was a tide that could not be held back. Only by witnessing its horrors would humans and Pokémon begin to cherish peace, paving the way for the true unification of Unova. Lucien needed time. Through newspapers, he could highlight the territory's growth, attract newcomers, and gather talent. When the kingdom's towns grew weary of war and resentment rose, public opinion would naturally turn to the one man capable of ending it. At that point, even nobles would be powerless to resist the tide of popular support. Before that day arrived, however, Lucien needed to save as many displaced people and Pokémon as possible and strengthen his own territory. With Kyurem guarding the land, no one dared attack lightly. Kyurem, Zekrom, and Reshiram were like nuclear deterrents. They might never be used, but having them changed everything. Even if his two brothers discovered his location, they would hesitate. Lucien pushed aside his thoughts and patiently explained to Christina the process of printing, distributing, and selling the newspaper. As she listened, Christina's eyes began to shine with excitement. Good news spread quickly. With newspapers, everyone in the territory would finally learn more about Pokémon. They could understand their habits, how to work with them, and how to stay safe if they ran into wild ones. Even Christina's eyes sparkled the more she listened. Lucien smiled. "So, would you like to take the role of editor-in-chief?" Christina's talent with a brush had always been exceptional, and this position suited her perfectly. "Yes. I definitely won't disappoint you, Your Highness," she answered, her voice trembling with excitement. She had long wondered what meaningful role she could serve. Now, Lucien had given her a path and a purpose. In that case, the position is yours, Lucien said. With the newspaper established, new jobs would appear throughout the territory as well, like newsboys delivering papers to households every morning. I'll work hard, Christina promised sincerely. Lucien nodded. Specialists will handle printing and distribution. I'll provide the daily magical beasts knowledge columns, and you'll focus on illustrating them. Also, you may report major events that happen in the territory so everyone stays informed. For example, since it's summer and extremely hot, you can publish information about ice-type magical beasts. Let people know that they can help keep homes cool. There were many ice types in the region, especially near the great snow-capped mountains where Articuno lived. I understand, Christina said, inspiration already overflowing. Then go prepare, Lucien said. Yes, Your Highness. She left with full determination. Lucien let out a slow breath. Another task completed. Elif approached with a cheerful expression. Your Highness Lucien, the berry orchards and fruit fields all had a good harvest this summer. Is there any watermelon left? Lucien asked. He had noticed that several Pokémon had developed a fondness for them. Of course. I'll have some delivered immediately. Elif bowed and left the room. A short while later, a cart piled high with large watermelons was brought inside. The maids carried them in, and Lucien sliced a few, sharing with Dragonite and Kyurem. He then stacked the rest beside Kyurem. Kyurem? Watermelon tastes even better when chilled. It's more refreshing, Lucien explained with a gentle grin. Kyurem stared silently. For a moment, it said nothing. Then it exhaled a cold breath, and a thin layer of frost spread across all the watermelons almost instantly. The giant ice dragon slowly turned its head and fixed its golden eyes on Lucien. Lucien couldn't help but think, having an ice-type Pokémon in summer was incredibly convenient. But, would Kyurem get mad if it realized Lucien was basically using it as a refrigerator and air conditioner? He wondered if his older brothers used Reshiram to grill meat, bake bread, and fire bricks, or if Zekrom powered their entire estates like a living lightning generator. Lucien, of course, kept those thoughts firmly inside. Kyurem, however, had lived for thousands of years, and it was no naive hatchling. It knew exactly what Lucien was doing. Yet not only did Kyurem not get angry, it seemed pleased. Because this was exactly how Lucien wished to change the world, to let humans and Pokémon live better lives together. And besides, Kyurem wasn't losing anything. Quite the opposite. The ice dragon glanced down at the frosted watermelons piled beside it. They tasted delicious. Chapter 159, Gullet and Ampharos. 7 days passed in a flash. With John and Shuppet working together day and night, the clay figure carved with runic patterns had finally absorbed enough ghost-type energy. A low rumble filled the room. The faintly glowing runes lit up all at once, and the entire clay figure began to tremble. The figure's eyes flickered open, irregular, geometric shapes, like something from an ancient digital pattern. The spiraling runes on its chest solidified, transforming into a stone plate engraved with swirling markings. A moment later, the clay figure slowly stood up. Its movements were stiff and mechanical, like a puppet just learning to move its limbs. After a long period of awkward adjustment, it finally raised its head and stared straight at Lucien. It was born, his first Gullet. The newborn Gullet didn't yet know how to speak. It simply stared at Lucien blankly, its unblinking eyes reflecting his silhouette. Gullet? Lucien tried. No response. Only that same innocent, vacant gaze. Lucien frowned slightly and opened his system panel. Pokémon, Gullet. Type, ground/ghost. Gender, none. Ability, Klutz. Moves, Mudslap, Astonish. Friendship, 100, can exceed the usual maximum under special conditions. Origin, created in Kingdom Year 149. So everything is functioning normally, Lucien murmured. Astonish and Mudslap, basic moves a newborn Gullet should have. Its level was roughly equivalent to level 1. ability, klutz. Yes, that certainly matched the way it moved. But the number that truly surprised him was the friendship value. Friendship, maxed out already? Lucian blinked. Did it really recognize him as its creator? Lucian touched his chest lightly, amused. Gallet, I'm Lucian. Gallet didn't reply. It simply stared at him, unmoving, as if its entire world revolved around memorizing this one face. Ugh. Dragonite leaned forward, rubbing its head in confusion. Why did this little guy look so empty inside? It's just been born. It hasn't fully adapted yet, Lucian explained to the curious Pokémon gathering around him. Truthfully, this was not the first Gallet in history. Ancient civilizations had created many Gallet and Gallark long ago, constructed from clay and spirit energy to protect both humans and Pokémon. That was why Gallet species were inherently loyal, not a single one ever disobeyed its creator. The rebellious streak of something like Ash's Charizard would simply never exist in them. Gallet, still watching Lucian, tilted its head. It seemed to be engraving this moment into the core of its being. Gallet, turn right, Lucian tested. Gallet immediately rotated, directly to the left. That's left. Gallet jerked and turned again, this time completely backward. That's behind you. Gallet rotated once more and finally, after a moment of wobbling, turned the correct direction. Lucian rubbed the bridge of his nose. Despite himself, he smiled. It's actually kind of cute like this. He knelt down and gently patted Gallet's clay body. Since you've been given life, stay with us from now on. Gallet opened its mouth slightly, trying to respond, but unable to produce sound yet. No matter. It was his Pokémon now, clumsy or not. With Victini temporarily accompanying them, Lucian realized something amusing. His team of 6 was finally full. Dragonite, Superior, Larvesta, Victini, Kyurem, and Gallet. Exactly 6. Lucian looked at the newly born Gallet before him. It was still clumsy and unsteady, but he had no intention of abandoning it. He had created it with his own hands, after all. And human-made Pokémon were incredibly adaptable. Right now, Gallet's body held only ordinary ghost-type energy. If, one day, he infused it with Giratina's power, would it undergo a qualitative transformation? Lucian couldn't help but imagine it. But such thoughts were far too early. Giratina was in the distant Sinnoh region, and with Unova not yet unified, leaving was impossible. A knock came at the door. Lucian paused for a moment. Come in. Elif pushed the door open and entered with Megan beside him. Your Highness, Megan wishes to see you, Elif reported. Megan? Lucian was a little surprised. What happened at the ranch? Megan quickly explained, Your Highness, it's Falfi. Falfi evolved. Just like the Magikarp did before. Evolved? Lucian remembered that among the Mareep Megan raised, there were a few Flaffy. And now Falfi had evolved, meaning an Ampharos had been born. Ampharos shed all its wool upon evolving and could no longer produce fleece. At first glance, it seemed less useful to the ranch, but to the territory, an Ampharos was incredibly valuable. Its tail, tipped with a bright red orb, could emit a powerful light, bright enough to be seen from the sea. For sailors in coastal regions, Ampharos served as a beacon, a living lighthouse guiding lost ships home. If the territory had several Ampharos, they could be hired to light the roads at night or illuminate work areas for nighttime labor. Lucian had never seen an Ampharos in person since arriving in this world, and excitement stirred in him. He wanted to witness how bright that tail light truly was. Take me to see it, Lucian said immediately. Yes, Your Highness. Megan replied, not daring to delay. They left the town and soon arrived at Megan's ranch. Once inside, Lucian instantly spotted a Pokémon standing out among the flock of wool-covered Mareep. Hairless yellow skin. Soft white belly. The glowing red orb at the end of its tail. There was no mistaking it. It was Ampharos. Chapter 160, Newspapers and Electric Lights. Night fell, and although every household lit kerosene lamps, the territory was still wrapped in layers of darkness. But outside Lucian City, Megan's ranch shone as bright as day. The brilliant light radiating from Ampharosa's glowing tail illuminated the entire pasture. So bright! Megan couldn't help but exclaim. It's like daytime. Ampharos stood proudly in the field, tilting its head to admire the shining orb at the end of its tail. Its expression was full of joy. Ampha! Just like the Pokédex describes, Lucian thought to himself, though he couldn't help regretting one thing: the territory currently had only one Ampharos. Large-scale deployment was impossible. However, seeing the radiant light and thinking back to the newspaper he had just created, Lucian suddenly had a brilliant idea. The headline for the first issue of the Royal Gazette was settled. Since this era had no electricity and no electric lamps, Ampharos could serve as living light sources, helping people during the night. The next morning, Lucian called for Christina, the editor-in-chief of the royal newspaper, and shared his idea with her. Under Lucian's direction, the printing process progressed rapidly. 3 days later, the first issue of the Royal Gazette was officially released. The newspaper debuts. A newsstand? What's that? A newspaper? What's a newspaper? Seeing the curious crowd gathering around, the newsstand worker explained cheerfully. This is something His Highness Lucian created to entertain everyone and let you understand more about what's happening in the territory, along with knowledge about magical beasts. The royal newspaper publishes new issues regularly, each with different content. If you're interested, you can buy a copy. If you want a long-term subscription or don't want to walk all the way here, you can pre-order for a small fee. We have dedicated delivery workers who will bring it to your door. If you can't read, the delivery person can even read it aloud to you. This last detail was something Lucian personally insisted on. Considering the literacy level of his people, a newspaper reader profession was essential. That's incredible. How much does it cost? A resident asked. 3 copper coins per issue, the worker said, holding out 3 fingers. The price was equivalent to a loaf of black bread, very affordable for commoners who now had stable incomes. I'll take one. A man said eagerly. Here you go. The worker handed him a neatly folded square paper. Would you like the reading service? The man, who had never learned to read, ran his fingers over the smooth surface. So soft, this is paper? Yes, the worker said with a grin, then lifted another copy and began reading aloud. The first issue. First, the contents of the front page. July 20th, Kingdom Year 149, celebrating the establishment of the Royal Newspaper Office. His Highness Lucian delivers an important message to all citizens. Hearing their prince's name, people nearby hurried over. The delivery worker continued reading. My dear citizens, thank you for your hard work over the past year. Because of your effort, Lucian City has become what it is today. I express my heartfelt gratitude to all of you. Let us continue building a prosperous and powerful home together. Heavens! His Highness Lucian is thanking us? People were stunned, and then deeply moved. In truth, they were the ones who owed Lucian their thanks. His policies had given them food, warmth, safety, and hope. Soon, the crowd's astonishment transformed into excitement and pride. Having such a benevolent lord was a blessing worth 8 lifetimes. The worker continued. Next is page 2, Magical Beasts Knowledge Corner. Mareep is an electric-type magical beast. Its wool is excellent for making clothing and carpets. But once Mareep evolves into Flaffy, and Flaffy evolves into Ampharos, it no longer produces wool. But the orb on Ampharosa's tail gives off an incredibly bright light at night, far brighter than a kerosene lamp. With an Ampharos around, no one ever needs to fear the dark again. Beneath this section of the newspaper was a clear illustration of Ampharos lighting up the night sky, making the information easy for every commoner to understand. This magical beast can do that? Such thoughts instantly surfaced in the minds of the crowd. Some residents even began considering raising a Mareep of their own. After all, merchants in the city were already buying Mareep wool by the cartload. Wool while young, lighting while grown, Mareep truly was extraordinary. Soon, a wave of enthusiasm for raising Mareep swept across Lucian City. Your Highness Lucian, the newspaper has become incredibly popular throughout the city. Elif reported with a beaming smile. Every morning, people line up at the newsstands for the newest issue. Many households have even subscribed to regular delivery. Good, Lucian said, nodding in satisfaction. Whether it was editors, delivery workers, newspaper readers, or newsstand owners, all of them provided new jobs for the residents. This alone helped boost the territory's economy. However, Lucian's mind was on something else entirely. Early this morning, he had entrusted a very special sheet of paper to the Zack caravan. By his calculations, they should be arriving soon. Right on time, a guard hurried inside. Your Highness Lucian, a merchant who calls himself Zack requests an audience. Let him in, Lucian replied. Moments later, a familiar figure rushed inside, clutching a pristine white sheet of paper. His expression was filled with excitement and disbelief. Your Highness, what is this? Zack exclaimed. Paper, Lucian replied simply, then smiled. Tell me, how much do you think this kind of paper would sell for in other cities? Zack gulped, staring at the sheet in his hands. The paper was pure white, smooth, durable, and clearly valuable. To nobles and scholars of other towns, this would be a rare treasure. Zack was certain, some lords would pay hundreds of gold coins for a single blank sheet like this. He gave his honest estimate. Lucian wasn't surprised. Pure white paper required a more refined process. Compared to the slightly yellow, cheaper paper used by commoners in his territory, this high-grade version was crafted specifically to drain money from wealthier nobles. In that case, Lucian said, I'll entrust all sales of this premium paper to you. You set the price. We split the profits, 30% for you, 70% for me. Agreed? Zack's face lit up with joy. Thank you for your trust, Your Highness Lucian. I will not disappoint you. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated to a Medieval Pokémon World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. The series What If Fusion deck user in a different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX will be going on hold soon, since we're nearly at the end of the story. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these 3 fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if Reincarnated in Bleach as Toshiro Hitsugaya? What if Reincarnated in Marvel as a gamer? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.